going to make, and I started making things. And some of them were dreadful, but I learned quite a lot about what I wanted to do, you know, what I wanted to, how I wanted to say things in slightly different ways. And people want things that are special to them, or of high quality, or that particularly enrich them. Like in Japan, for example, people don't buy a three-piece suite and spend 700, 800 quid on a three-piece suite. They spend 700 or 800 quid on a pot because it's more important to them than a three-piece suite. Now, we don't have quite that in our culture, but it's coming. You know, people are beginning to appreciate the qualities that go into the making of pots. Yeah, it's interesting. When I first started potting, you know, you'd make a pot, and here you have this sort of, now what do I do with it? Where the hell, you know? And it occurred to me that in most countries there was a very rich symbology at one time of marks that meant something to people, whether it's to do with harvest, fertility, and so on and so forth. And nowadays, what have we got? Pound note? That's it. I mean, you know, or the dollar. We don't have marks. We don't have symbols. So I was thinking, okay, well, I want the marks to have some meaning for me. The first decoration I ever did, and it's a bowl, and what I did was to get a distemper brush and some local clay, dark slip, and I just went wavy round the pot. And the reason I did that is because I lived near the South Downs, and the South Downs were these sort of feminine rolling hills. So I did the same. And that was it, because that was my surrounding. I think the earliest pots were people made baskets. They went to the river, they lined the baskets with clay, they filled it with water and brought the water back to their little huts. And one day, somebody smoking an early cigarette burnt down their hut, and what was left standing was this pot with wicker marks around it. But I may be wrong, but that's how I think pots started. And maybe that's how marks started, you know, because a lot of early pots seem to have that type of mark on. The pressure of modern life tends to close us down. Because we're so busy, and I love that word, busyness, business tends to close us down if we don't have the skills to open ourselves up. If that can quieten down, then you begin to see things in a way which is very quiet, but relates to your inner vitality rather than your intellectual thought process, which can be very deadening. You have these little realizations, you know, little insights into something. And I remember I was teaching in Carlisle, and I was going in at Mutton, you know, had to get in at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was driving in through the town, and there's this dreadful 1950s council building. And I was driving past one morning, and I actually noticed that my chest dropped inwards. I thought, that's interesting, what's going on here, you know? And then a bit later on, I was thinking, hang on a minute, when you're inspired, you go, your chest rises. And why is it rise? Because you inspire, you take in breath, and that's where the word comes from. And I started to think that an awful lot of things in our modern world, the plastics and the tinsely stuff, and they're all sort of, they're not enriching and enlifting and enlivening, they're actually deadening. I can remember reading, I think, Brancusi in his old age up in some flat in Paris, and somebody said, come on, let's go for a walk. He said, no, I can't go for a walk. I said, one tree's enough for me. He said, this glass of water's enough for me. I mean, look at the beauty of this glass of water. So here's someone whose mind was just fully open to the immediacy of beauty. the reason why I